Namaste and welcome to the second episode of NCU podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Rituparna Bhattacharjee, and today we have amongst us world famous food critic, Padma Shri awardee, historian, a prolific author, Professor Pushpesh Pant. Thank you, sir, for joining
Thank you.
us
It's a
today.
pleasure to be with you. I'm a little surprised that you missed out one part of the introduction, that I've been part of the North Cat family.
Absolutely, sir. I'm coming to
law here, and some of the happiest years of my life, post-retirement, active, have been at this university. And as a matter of fact, I was awarded the Padma Shri when I was in the School of Law here.
So I was coming to that. So it has been such an absolute honor to always have you between us. And I so specifically remember a few months back when I met you, you had come down to mentor us, the law faculties. And I was so stupefied by your presence that I wanted to ask you so many questions. And I did ask you a few questions. And what I could take away from that conversation was that your homeschooling and your mother had a very significant influence in shaping you who you are today. So if you could share more on that.
That's difficult because that was a different time, different age. My mother had studied at Shantiniketan, and when she married my father, who was posted in a research station in a small hill town in Nainital district, she decided that to send kids to boarding school would be a crime. She had herself studied in Bharati Shantiniketan, so she decided to homeschool us. And that, I think, is the best thing that happened to me ever. Because what she did was that she did not believe in teaching us alphabets. She would go straight, she would bring out a book like Abul Tabu and Bank Pada Chapta and things of that kind. Or she would bring a Gujarati book, she was born in Kathiawad, and come out with Nichu Bhai Nicho Padiyos, Popat Khatu Nathi, Popat Shutu Nathi. It was so effortless that before we knew, we were being taught. I had picked up Gujarati, I had picked up Bengali. We had, of course, picked up the alphabets, but not in the usual rote method. And she would quote Shakespeare in the original and not the comic book version. It was fantastic to have her. She herself was a polyglot. She spoke half a dozen languages. And her research topic at Shantiniketan with Khichdi Monchen, Amar Sen's grandfather, and Professor Tan Yun Shan of the Chinese department was retrieval of lost manuscripts from India, from Vajra Suchi, like the Buddhist texts, from Tibetan and Chinese back to Sanskrit and Pali Prakrit. And because she was very fluent in Bengali, she conversed in Oriya, Hamia, and her father had been posted there for a short while at Karnataka. So she had learnt a bit of the Kannada, and she was absolutely wonderful. And she was wonderful as a teacher, patient. And you said something about my presence stupefying. It is not stupefying, it probably is stimulating. Had you been stupefied, you would have been speechless.
I actually had a fan moment at that point, sir.
You get my game, but let's keep that out and just continue with the conversation.
Right, sir. Sir, also, as a professor at JN, you had an experience as a first row seat to experience the transitioning international relations.
I would interrupt you here, Dr. Bhattacharjee. Before I ended up in JNU, there was a short period in my life when I taught history in Delhi University. And that again is interesting because I was 21 when I just finished my PhD and degree had not been awarded, and I was appointed a lecturer in Delhi University, Ram's College to be precise. It was interesting that most of my students, not in the MA class, but even BA honors class, were older than me. I remember two brothers called Sadan Singh Yadav and Madan Singh Yadav who had got admitted into the wrestlers' quota. They would do wrestling practice in the morning and sleep and snore in my class. So one day I had to tell them, why do you sleep in the class? It's bad. It was a small class of 10 students. Sir thak jati hai, neend aa jati hai, doodh peete hain, dand pelte hain. So I said, can I do you a favor? I'll mark your present, but go outside and snore wherever you do, but not in the class. But I enjoyed teaching history. And I taught history for the master's class in the department. But 2 years were about to be over and I was getting sick of Delhi University, not university, but the college. The college was then being run by a principal who was very strict. One day he called me and said, Dr. Pant, very formally, why are you not dressed comfortably? So I said, Garmi ka mausam tha. I said, I'm dressed up comfortably. I'm in a jeans and t-shirt with the collar open. He said, no. You are a lecturer, you should come in a shirt and trousers. So I told him, in that case, sir, you meant that I should dress up formally, uncomfortably, not comforting. So that was the end of the story, but I thought it was too much. He didn't like my mixing with the students and so on. And I was young and I could afford, I had no responsibilities. So I resigned. I did not even wait for my increment that year. And that increment I lost forever. I just taught there for 2 years. And I was underage. I did not want to take the IAS. I didn't want to take the civil services. So I went to my father for advice, and he told me, as long as you did not study medicine, it doesn't make a difference to me. In my case, my children should either study medicine or nothing at all. Actually, there's an interesting joke about that. I got my PhD and I started writing doctor in front of my name. And one day somebody came and said, Dr. Pant. So I was heading towards the door. So my father told me, son, in this house, there will be only one Dr. Pant with patients coming before him. So that was a sobering thought. And ever since, I never wrote doctor in my visiting card. It's either Pushpesh Pant, not even Professor Pant, just Pushpesh Pant. That's it. So I switched over, resigned. Then I spent a few months, 6 months, in a place called Indian Institute of Defence Studies and Analysis. The director then was Mr. Subramaniam, the present foreign minister's father. And so I had the pleasure of working under him and discussing international relations between history and JNU. Then I was still there when there was a gentleman called Professor Shishir Gupta. He was an assistant editor in Times of India. He had just come back from Australia. One day he called me for a coffee, and I didn't know why he called me for a coffee in the canteen. He said, Pushpesh, how would you like to join the JNU? I said, I don't like the history department. I have not liked the people who were in Delhi. I did not get along well with Romila Thakur or with Bimal Babu. Bimal Prasad to hamare hain the, Bipin Chandra. They were Marxist people and they did not want anybody who was not a sycophant or a chamcha to be with them. So I said, I don't think. He said, no, I'm asking you to join the School of International Studies. So I said, fair enough, let's see what happens. So he said, you have not completed 3 years, we can't appoint you a reader, but we'll make you a reader the next year. Come and join us. So we had a long conversation, and I never regretted that. I joined them, his department, and interesting things happened. The transition, not only of international relations, a new phase, it was a very interesting time when it was in memory of Jawaharlal Nehru, but Mrs. Gandhi was very much in power. So ours was a favoured institution. So we had our first vice chancellor was Mr. G. Bhattacharjee, who had served as India's envoy in China, and Bhavani Sen Gupta, who used to write on diplomatic affairs, was a professor for disarmament studies, and Shishir Gupta was a professor of diplomatic studies. It was great fun to be in that university then. So, and actually, as a pure trivia, the very first year batch I taught in MA had the present foreign minister Jaishankar, whose father was Mr. K. Subramaniam. And Jaishankar had joined as a very bright student that year, and he's still a very brilliant person, but is an aside.
Right, sir. So then, you are also known for your work as a food critic, and your book, India the Cookbook, was one of the best New York Times
I
sellers.
hate doing this, but I will interrupt you again. I'm not a food critic.
Right.
Food critic is a person who goes to a restaurant, eats, maybe pays the bill, maybe doesn't pay the bill, but says this was good, this was not good, this was tasty, this was not tasty. I don't do that. I like to think of myself as a cultural anthropologist who's writing about food as a food anthropology. Indian food is a key to Indian civilization. Like everybody mentions this
India the
Cookbook
Cookbook.
because it got into the New York Times bestseller list,
Right.
made me a lot of money.
Right.
But I think the book which I've enjoyed working as a smaller, cheaper book is called Food Path. This is the story of dhabas along the GT road.
Okay.
So I didn't get a visa to go to Pakistan.
Right.
My son did, but I did not. So a friend in Pakistan did this section between Khyber Darra and Lahore Wagah border for us. My son and I did from Wagah border till Bangladesh and Bengal, where Sagar Sanami, Navadvip, etc. We did 7-8 journeys by plane, by boat, by road, by train, and got the feel of the GT road. And the GT road is an interesting story because this road was originally built by Ashok. It was called the Uttarapath. It went into disrepair. Then it was repaired by Shershah Suri, and British repaired it and called it the Grand Trunk Road and gave that to Shershah Suri. Now the interesting thing about this book is that it is like a river. A river has a mainstream, it has tributaries, it has contributaries,
Right.
it has an estuary. It may start from some glacial origin source in Himalayas, but becomes it has several confluences. So wherever you go, somebody claims that this is my GT road. GT road is a loop. You can go via Kanpur, Tundla, you can go via Delhi, Aligarh. And anybody, I met somebody far from GT road. The signage on his shop said GT road. So I said, ये तो GT road नहीं है. He said, तुमको क्या पता है? हमारे पुरखे बाप दादे यहाँ बैठते थे. Do you know better that this is GT road or not GT road? There was no GT road within 40 kilometers. But he said so it's fair enough. So then there are interesting things. The food changes from Punjab, Lahore to Bengal, Bihar.
Right.
There is a line near Kanpur which is Jairam Ramesh calls it the Dal divide. Where the line divides north, south, east, west. To the west of it is Kali Dal, Mahdi Dal. To the east of it is Arhar ki Dal, yellow dal.
Yes.
To the north of it is roti. To the south it would be rice.
Right.
But the interesting part in GT road is that you go beyond Banaras. So you have rice, chokha, litti, bharta, yellow dal, totally different universe. So it was great fun doing that book. And I enjoyed that.
So, क्योंकि आपने मेंशन करा एक तरफ हिस्ट्री एक तरफ इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस तो आपने फिर हाउ कम यू व्हाट वाज योर इंस्पिरेशन कि आप खाने की
It's going
तरफ
back to the obvious. The inspiration was my mother.
Right.
My mother was very knowledgeable about everything. She was as close to a genius I have come across a person. You ask her something and you would get a lecture, interesting lecture on that totally. She used to use a phrase called hastamala kavat. You have the amla and you keep an amla berry on your palm and you look at it this way. So you can look up the bird's eye view all the way around, 360 degree vision, and she would tell you about that. इसका property ये है, astringent है, कसैला है, vitamin C इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा है. I'm giving you the amla example. She could do it with almost anything. Now, once when I was a young kid, and my father was a doctor, so he would ask my mother, keep asking my mother, इसको खाने से क्या पसंद करता है? Why do we eat this? So my mother would say, इसकी तासीर ये होती है. Although he was a doctor, but my mother would say from Ayurveda, from Unani, ये गर्मी के लिए अच्छा है, ये जाड़े के लिए अच्छा है, ये memory के लिए अच्छा है, ये bone के लिए अच्छा है, ये anti-flatulent है, ये carminative है, ये astringent है, ये antipyretic है, बुखार कम होता है. I'll give you an example. There's a herb called jarakush.
Okay.
All the Avadi Bawarchis use it and call it jarakush. The original name of this herb is Jwarankush. Jwar is fever. Ankush is the goad of an elephant.
Okay.
Something which controls fever is Jwarankush. So originally this herb was used as an antipyretic.
Okay.
Now you have, what do you have? You have chaat. You have chaat, and what does chaat have? It has asafoetida.
Right.
It has imli.
Right.
It has maybe a little sugar.
Yes.
Maybe it has a little salt. Maybe it has cumins. Maybe it has a little fennel. Leave it listed at this stage.
Right.
See the properties of these things.
Mm-hmm.
It is an aperitif. It is a digestive. It is a carminative. It is an antiflagellant. So you have in one. Also, it is ORH. So if you get dehydrated, what do? You have a saline thing. You have a sugar thing and a little citric acid.
Yes.
So ये हमारा ready-made traditional ORH था. There is a chutney which is mentioned in old literature as chutney rahat jaan. Something which saves you, revives you, saves your life after a heat stroke. Similarly, you have a very famous commercial sharbat called Sharbat Rue Afza. So somebody which revives your soul.
Right.
So these things were there. So my father and mother would have this dialogue unending.
Right.
So I got interested in that. And then I did history. When I did history, I did ancient Indian history. I did Sanskrit. I studied Ayurveda on my own. So my interest in food was part Ayurvedic, part historical. I'll give you another example. It becomes almost a lesson in Indian aesthetics. There is a concept of ras. आप कहते खाने में रस नहीं था, खाना नीरस था, फीका था, insipid था.
Right.
And what you use the same word ras when you have a dance performance. You have navaras.
Right.
You have a musical performance. You have ras.
Right.
And then you have a season for a ras. इस season में हम ये राग सुनेंगे. बारिश में मेघ मल्हार होगा, वसंत में वसंत बहार होगा, गर्मियों में दीपक हो सकता है, and so on and so forth. So there will be a season to a musical rag. There will be a rasa to a musical rag. What makes you feel sad? What makes you feel happy? So I started thinking in terms of food being the mood manipulator. You are having depression. Perish the thought.
Right.
One is having depression.
Right.
and one wants to feel euphoric. तो आप वो खाना खाएंगे जो आपको थोड़ा exhilarate करेगा, uplift करेगा. And I'm not talking of intoxicants. I'm talking of exhilarating foods of ecstasy or drinks. Similarly, you are hyper excited. So
something
थोड़ा
that
cool down,
calm you
chill.
down.
तो आपको tranquilizing खाना चाहिए ना. तो वही आप सुनोगे उस वक्त वो म्यूजिक सुनोगे. अगर आप रैप सुन रहे हो तो it is not the mood for tranquilizing. It is mood to uplift you, hopefully. If you are want a meditative mood, you probably want a slow alarm instrumental, not even a vocal music. Or if you are singing, it could be a ghazal, it could be a tappa, it could be a bhajan, it could be a tumri, it could be a dadra. So I started studying aesthetics of Indian culture, and then it took me back again and again to food.
Right. So on this note, I have a question. What is your opinion on vegan and non-vegan food?
We the Indians always eat vegan. It was not fashionable, but we eat vegan. I'll give you a very crude example. There is a Rahim ka dua, I think. रूखी सूखी खाएगी, ठंडा पानी पी, देख पराई चूपड़ी, मत ललचावे जी. Why was it? कि गरीब आदमी के पास खाने को घी नहीं था. He was a dairy product, so he could not have it. Even if he had cows at home, buffaloes at home, he made ghee, but sold it. He could not afford to eat it. So his everyday खाना was रूखी सूखी. Now रूखी सूखी eliminated the dairy. चूपड़ी तो गई. अच्छा, वो जो खा रहा था वो क्या खा रहा था? He was eating lentils, he was eating rice grain, he was eating millets. तो इनमें से किसी भी चीज में जब तक chemical fertilizers नहीं थे, it was totally organic and totally vegan. अब हमारा स्वीटनिंग क्या था? हमारा स्वीटनिंग गन्ना था, गुड़ था, वो था टोटली वीगन. हमारा साउरिंग एजेंट क्या था? वो नींबू था, इमली थी, स्कॉट डेट ऑफ इंडिया, तमरीन, कोकम था, मैंगोस्टीन था, अनराइप मैंगो था, अनराइप ग्रेप्स थे, ऑल वीगन. तो आप सब्जी पे आई. आपकी सब्जी क्या थी? yams थे, unless you are a Jain, you will not avoid yams. Squashes थे, pumpkin था. From Vedic times हाग था, green leafy vegetables थी. और हमारे जो oils थे, they are called tel. The word tel derives from til, which is vegan again. Oil seeds. Coconut oil is vegan. Mustard oil is vegan. Peanut oil is vegan. So what are we talking about? Our cooking ingredient was vegan. Our cereals were entirely vegan. Our sweetening agents were vegan. So ये तो आज का फैशन है ना कि हम vegan खा रहे हैं is more expensive than eating normal food. I think this is a fad which West imposed on us. It's fine. We were always vegan.
All right, sir. So on that interesting note, I would want to ask you a fun question.
Yes.
So, because
all these were fun questions.
Right, sir. So a little more fun question. क्योंकि आपने history पढ़ा हुआ है, पढ़ाया है, international relations भी, and अपने law में भी आपने हमें पढ़ाया है. तो sir, if you could invite a historical figure for dinner, who would that be, and what would you serve?
I would like, he's not very fashionable these days. I would like to invite Aurangzeb and feed him khichdi. And why? I will tell you.
Right.
Because today we see khichdi as either the Prime Minister's favorite food from Gujarat, which he feeds all the heads of state, or you have khichdi which is fed to an old man like me, कि पेट खराब हो जाएगा खिचड़ी खा लो, या बच्चे को खिलाते हैं खिचड़ी, या बीमार को खिलाते हैं खिचड़ी. And we tend to forget that khichdi was once a deluxe food. It is mentioned 1,000 years ago in a book called Kitab al-Hind by Al-Baruni, who says the staple diet of Indians is khichdi. They eat a porridge like khichdi twice a day, but this was the poor man's khichdi. What was the rich man's khichdi? Remember the story, Birbal ki khichdi. It took hours to cook. Have you ever thought why did it take hours to cook? Birbal was a very clever man. Why did it take hours to cook the khichdi? The story is very interesting. Akbar could never defeat the Sultan of Gujarat. The person who defeated the Sultan of Gujarat was his son, Prince Salim, who was not Jahangir then. He had not fallen in love with Anarkali, forget about that story, so father was not angry with him. When he came from Gujarat, the national food or sub-national food of Gujarat was a khichdi, Balji ki khichdi. So he ordered the cooks to make a special khichdi to celebrate the victory of Salim over Gujarat. So he, in a manner, had digested Gujarat. Kha pachai liya tha. Now this khichdi was not moong dal ki patli khichdi. It was called laziza. Laziza means the delicious one. And what this khichdi was, this khichdi of course had wheat. It has dried fruits, it had nuts. And this khichdi, we also find mention in the great Sufi poet Hazrat Rumi's died. Hazrat Rumi was a Sufi saint.
Right.
Now, before we come to Hazrat Rumi, let's finish this story.
Right.
This obviously it was pre-pressure cooker days. तो इसमें मीट भी पड़ा हो, ड्राई फ्रूट्स भी पड़े हो, नट्स भी पड़े हो, खिचड़ी एरोमेटिक भी हो, उसको बनाने में बहुत टाइम लगता था. The charge was given to Birbal, who was the wittiest and the brightest of the 9 jewels in this.
Right.
That खिचड़ी became, उसको पकने में टाइम लगा, so it became synonymous with anything which takes too much time to do after beginning. Now the same खिचड़ी is given as a pulao without meat and without some other riches, because Hazrat Rumi was a Sufi ascetic.
Okay.
He could not eat rich food. So he gave up eating rich food, including meat. Then he started losing weight. His murids were very unhappy. अब क्या होगा, पीर का पीर तो चले जाएंगे. So without telling him, they enriched his khichdi. He would only eat khichdi with things like kabuli chana, rich in protein, nuts, chestnuts, prunes, dried apricots, and this khichdi was also pulao without rice and meat, sort of. And this was another khichdi. So if you combine the two aristocratic khichdi's of the Sufi saint and the Badshah, there is one more story to this. See, Aurangzeb, everybody says that was a ascetic. खाने पीने का शौक नहीं था उसे. But a recent biography of Aurangzeb brings out some letters written by him to his son. उसने अपने बाप को जेल में डाला था और उसके बच्चे उससे कोई खास मोहब्बत करते नहीं थे. So he spent the last 50 years of his life in Deccan.
Right.
And in Deccan, he lived on khichdi. This one letter he writes to his son, I think Burhan, and he says, "Dear son, last time I came to your house, your camp, your cook had made a delectable khichdi. Can you spare that cook to me? I miss not many things, but I miss that khichdi in Deccan in Aurangabad." Son was a Cossack son. He never sent the cook. So there is another letter from Aurangzeb which went to his son. I can see that you are not willing to spare the cook, but can you spare his assistant who can at least cook halfway decent khichdi? So khichdi was something that people used to pine for. So, and you are from Bengal.
Right.
So the bhuni khichdi, which is on Durga Pandal's, is a delicacy in itself. You talk in terms of a kejri, with the Anglo-Indian saying, which had fish, which had leftover roast, and which was very. So I don't really know whether there is anything as noble as khichdi, but it is not the sick man's khichdi.
Right. So speaking of food, sir, what is your opinion on India's food laws and where are we lacking behind?
Look, the India's food laws cover a very vast gamut. Right after independence, or even during the war times, India was coping with shortages. So the rationing laws are ultimately food laws now.
Right.
So what you can consume in what quantity. You will get limited amount of sugar, you will get limited amount of fat, you will get limited amount of rice of a decent variety. Everything was rationed. Right. So the rationing is a wartime politics, and the first laws are there. Then there is black marketing. So there is anti-black marketing laws. Then there is adulteration. You try to cheat by kakkad dal mein mila do, पपीते के बीज काली मिर्च में मिला दो,
कलर मिला दिया,
लेड क्रोमेट
ईटा मिला दो, मिर्ची में,
हल्दी में मिला लो. So then there were laws against adulteration. So these laws were up in your face laws about food.
True.
But the food laws in recent days have changed. We have labeling laws.
Yes.
So what is additive, what is natural, what is nature identical, what color is there, कौन सा कलर है, टाटजीन है, रेड को जिंगल का बना है, एनिमल ओरिजिन का है, सिंथेटिक है. If you open the EU cookbook, E111 क्या है, UA18 क्या है, तो it's very difficult. It says spices and condiments.
Right.
You go to the Oxford English Dictionary and tell me what is a spice and what is a condiment. Where do you draw the line? What is natural and what is nature identical? What is deoxidant and what is no artificial preservatives? But if you have antioxidants, what role are they doing? So there are packaging laws.
Right.
Food grade plastic है कि नहीं, nobody checks up with that. So the food laws have gone up. The fourth category, which is most distressing food laws, are what you allow into the country as free import after globalization. तो आप ये कहते हैं कि हमने fruits allow किए, So if the fruits from America
Hmm.
or Australia
Hmm.
flood Indian markets,
Hmm.
then what happens to the Kinori orchard?
Right.
What happens to the Kashmiri apple grower?
Right.
Also, then it happens to what happens to fish. If your salmon fish is coming from
Yes.
Norway, and the Norwegian fisheries minister was banned from European market because she had a conflict of interest. She was farming. You have boneless fish coming from
Yes.
Vietnam, Nasa.
Yes.
Everybody is using that,
Yes.
but pumped with hormones, pumped with antibiotics. Why should one eat that? So there are.
तो अगर सर आपको जो एग्जिस्टिंग पॉलिसी मेकर्स या डिप्लोमेट्स हैं अगर उनको
Diplomats can do nothing about it.
Right.
The policy maker means in government people who are looking after food and agriculture.
if you had to give them a suggestion,
Nobody would take my advice
Right.
because the problem is that there are vested interests. Take an example of the American tariffs. Trump says that India has an imbalance $70 billion in her favor with the Americans.
right,
So import from us. India has two options. India can import either very high value weapons,
True.
which we don't know who will use against and whether they will be able to give us technology or not, or they will say take everything else from us. So the process would be that it would be very low value, but it would hurt us very much because there would be fish, there would be meat. आज भी आप खाइए ना,
हाँ जी.
तो in a restaurant, in a high class restaurant, he says barra kebab made with New Zealand lamb, mince samosa made with duck mince,
Yes.
turkey sausages, and you go to a nut. Nobody is eating walnuts and pistachios anymore. Pecan nuts, macadamia nuts, and these are the things we or you talked about some vegan thing. You say, oh millets. तो आपको अब समझ में आए. When Prime Minister said Shri Anna,
right,
you are supposed to eat couscous. You are supposed to eat bulgur wheat.
right,
I mean, we tend to go crazy over something which is important. Oh, you have shiitake dried mushrooms. Why not have mushrooms from Gucci from Kashmir or Ragda and Futka from Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh? Unfortunately, the food laws have terrible problems. You also have a fruit juice. It ultimately is not a fruit juice. It is a food-based drink. Some
Yes.
fruit juice and rest of it.
yes,
You have so-called ice cream, which is technically not an ice cream. It's a frozen dessert.
yes,
Very few genuine ice creams with X amount of dairy content in it. Oh, बढ़िया बर्थडे केक खा रहे थे, the metallic taste hits your palate, तब आपको पता चलता है vegetable oil का cream था, it's a non-dairy cream. So even unless you go to a really highly priced artisanal bakery, chances are that you are going to eat
right.
mineral-based
I
cream.
got your point. So, if
No, this is what I mean. The food laws should cover.
right, sir, as a professor, अगर आपको law students को advise करना हो, the students who are aspiring to take up a legal profession as their mainstream career, what do you think?
There are several options available.
Right.
You see, I enjoyed teaching the courses here.
Right.
We did not do food laws,
Hmm.
but we did science, technology, and law.
Yes.
So when we did science, technology, and law, we did medical termination of pregnancy.
Yes.
No, we even before that, artificial insemination, IVF. Then we did termination of pregnancy. Then we did gender and sexual orientation.
Right.
Then we did identity, basically identity. Then we did clinical trials informed basis. Then we did death. When does death take place? Active and passive euthanasia, punishments and right to privacy. And all this is interesting emerging areas of legal practice. Where there's clinical trial, they can only take place in a poor country. Drug stigmatization, these are the ones which I was interested in. The first course I took in this university was cyber crimes and computer laws in the very first batch. It was not even North Candid, it was called IT University.
right.
And that I enjoyed greatly because then nobody had smartphones.
Right.
You went to a cyber cafe and the laws dealt with cyber cafes as much as they dealt with what can be the IT law, which was very badly drafted.
Right.
But then some changes took place and ambiguously worded. It causes annoyance.
Right.
So it's like hurts feeling, you know.
Right.
Whose feelings are hurt, in what manner they are hurt, is there a measure? So there were interesting things which we could discuss. I think that area is still very important
Yes.
when we are talking of AI and computers.
Yes, I was coming to that question.
It is not a
sir.
question of computer crimes, but we
Right.
come to AI and chatbots and what it can do.
Right.
So that's another area. The third course I enjoyed teaching was sports and media. Because sports, again, most people don't think
Right.
it ठीक है, but you still see that there is a person who's been hauled up Lakshya
Ji.
for underage
Yes.
competition in a junior badminton.
Right.
Or there is somebody who has failed a dope test
Yes.
because his coach told him, "Arey beta kuch nahi hai, doodh hai." So
Ji.
ignorance of law is not
Yes.
a defense. But and if you are competing at international level, you bloody well worry about what you do. But similarly, like in the food laws, there is a non-trade tariff barrier. EU would put on phytosanitary conditions on you. In sports also, the Western countries would first of all get the sports out of the Olympics in which you win.
Mhm.
Then they will make drug testing so hard for you, or a gender testing. They will say, "Oh, Malleshwari is half man."
Huh.
There was this other girl who was from Orissa, जिसका gold medal suspected था.
जी.
So you would have fun, but nobody would talk about the Wimbledon player Martina Navratilova. She was having a lesbian relationship and was almost would have failed a gender test. Variety that's of that kind. So you have interesting issues in sports laws also, where big stakes are there. Yesterday, I think there was this news item that High Court of Delhi has admonished Shah Rukh Khan and others for promoting Akshay Kumar and Ajay Devgan and Pan Gutka.
Yes.
You are endorsing something which is disastrous, carcinogenic. There was Mahendra Singh Dhoni endorsing Amrapali, and the case going to the court that you are lending respectability to, or whether it's Amitabh Bachchan or Sachin Tendulkar. So big stakes are there because the money more than sports is in endorsements. And those endorsements and branding take you to Rajnikantha's, Pan Parag, Malik Chand's, or surrogate advertising like Kingfisher, or even Karan Thapar's great show is Glenfiddich Books. So what you can do as a surrogate advertising, what you can do in terms of informed consent or otherwise, or these things are interesting areas of development. To my knowledge, there is only one good book, Justice Mudgal's book on sports and medicine, but which is dated very fast, and because he was a judge and not a sports person.
Right.
So he does funny things with what give you the laws of cricket, give you the laws of this. It doesn't make sense. Then there is big politics of control of sports by dynasts. कौन politician control कर रहा, rifle association, कौन hockey कर रहा, कौन wrestling कर रहा, Bhushan was in use. So you have an interesting thing from cricket to hockey to spectator sports to advertising.
Right.
So that area is again very, very interesting. I did electoral laws, which I think is again will remain in as long as you have a democratic form of government.
Absolutely.
You may lose a case, but you will go to a case.
Yes.
And much remains to be done. So I think these are the areas. Then of course I taught forensic science here, which I think each day there is a development of what you can do with a small piece of hair, whether it was a Sikh burnt in the anti-Sikh riots in 1984 or was in the Sheena Bora murder case. You can go through matrilineal line and can do wonders with forensics.
Right.
So what you can do...
A lot many areas.
I think there is no area of law which will not open up things for you. Arbitration, mediation. I myself benefited greatly. I had a copyright dispute with my publisher. They had a blanket thing that you can't write another book on the subject.
Right.
So we ultimately said that you can't sign away a copyright in perpetuity. I had a very good lawyer. We had a very good mediation in Delhi High Court. And I won back my right to write whatever I want to do. So I think there are interesting areas, emerging technology, ways of life, and you have very interesting.
So you were also honored with Padma Shri. So tell us about that, sir. So were you expecting it?
That was purely coincidental.
How did you feel around it?
I'm not being modest. I'm not being modest. I had long ago thought that I should get a Padma Shri. Not I should, but maybe somebody would say, "Arey bada acha kaam kar rahe hain, padh rahe ko de do kuch." But it didn't happen.
Okay.
I one day got a call from a friend who was in home ministry, old student. "Sir, your name is being considered for Padma Shri. I hope I am the first one to give you the news." I said, "I don't believe you because normally they ask the person whether he would accept or refuse. So he's the first person to find out that my name is being considered." He said, "No, but in this case, if the Home Minister, the Prime Minister send the name, then we don't do the police check. We take it for granted that उन लोगों ने कोई due diligence कर दिया होगा." So I said, "Yes." Then I got another call of a friend who said, "Don't say no." So I said, "Why should I say no? Is it an honor?" I had a small problem. I talked it over with my son and he said, do you want to take it now? Because the government had changed.
Okay.
So I said, look, it's a national honor, and I think if I'm getting it when BJP is in power, it doesn't mean that I don't deserve it, and it probably was the pipeline before, and a decision has been taken now. It was nice. It was a nice feeling.
What did it mean to you at that point?
Look, to be very honest, it didn't mean much to me. I'll tell you another joke. Nixon lost the elections,
Okay.
and he was asked, how do you feel?
Right.
So he said, let me tell you the truth. I'm not young enough to say it doesn't matter. And I'm old enough not to cry.
Right.
So my position was something like that. I was close to 67, 68 then. Post-retirement, I was
Right.
teaching here. So, and everybody has been saying, कि आपको मिलने वाली है for 20 years. So it was not totally unexpected. And all my students had got it before me. Amitabh Mattu, who's
Ji.
very eminent intellectual, Shekhar Pathak,
Ji.
Anil Joshi.
Ji.
Anil Joshi is now Padma Bhushan also.
Yes.
So I thought it was all right. My cousin Mrinal Pandey had got it. Her brother-in-law Lalit Pandey had got it. So, and her father-in-law had got Padma Bhushan. My aunt had got it about 20 years ago, Shivani. So it was not as if my uncle, who was in Space Commission Vice Chairman, Candid, he had got a Padma Bhushan long years ago. So in the family there was enough sprinkling of these
Right.
honors. Not that I deserve, many more people deserve better than me. But I was not the most undeserving, shall we put it that way?
Sir, if you had to guide or put out a word for today's generation to be able to reach where you are, even a slightest bit,
No,
what works?
I have only one phrase,
Right.
is that your reach should be harder than your grasp. I mean, you don't reach anywhere. I don't think I've reached anywhere. The kind of promise and potential I showed at the age of 16 should have got me Nobel Prize. But no, this again I'm telling you honestly with modesty.
Right.
I had a photographic recall. I had done my master's before I was 18 years old. My PhD was finished at 21, and I was comfortable. And I traveled the world recently. What did I do? I just wrote some books on cuisine, learned something in dance and music. I still can't sing properly. I can't still dance properly. I was doing Kathak and Kathakali. I can't cook very well. My son cooks much better than I do. He is the only one in the family who can read Nastaliq Urdu and pronounces the poetry much better than I do. Who remembers film songs and can tell you ढोलक किसने बजाया था, शंकर जयकिशन ने, अकॉर्डियन किसका था, सितार किसका था, म्यूजिक किसका था, ये मूवमेंट हुसन राम भगतलाल का है या शंकर जयकिशन का है या लक्ष्मीकांत प्यारीलाल का है. So I know that there are people who have passion in their life, who follow it in a single-minded purpose and live a very happy life. I am in a manner unhappy man in a variety of ways. I enjoy Drupal, but I have not given my life to listening unadulterated. I have had the good fortune to have company of great painters, Ram Kumarji. Once upon a time, Hussain Saab and I shared the same Barsati. I was living in the Barsati. He came as a house guest. I was meant to vacate the Barsati. Our 7 house cast. I went to the drawing room. He went to the Barsati. Poet Agay used to stay there. Himmat Shah, who died recently, was once gifted me a lovely terracotta thing. So I'm mentioning this because accidentally in my life, again thanks to my mother, because her classmates were Shanko Chaudhary. In Shanti Niketan was M.G. Ramachandran, K. Subramaniam. There was Ramkinkar Bej. There was Jaya Pasani. And all these people were big names in Lens Kala Academy, Sangeet Natak Academy. Sundari Sridharani, who looked after Triveni, was with her. Malika Sarabhai was her roommate. Balraj Sahni was her English teacher. My mama's classmate was Manika. So, it was Bimal Roy came to look for outdoor locations and stayed with us in Mukteshwar for Madhumati shoot. So it is one of those things that because you were born in a family where connections were there and you lived off them. So it is not your achievement. You are just an accident of birth. You are born in a family where people took interest in music, art, literature, and culture. And you are lucky to be introduced to people who were liking for you. So
So, sir, because you were surrounded by so many successful people, and what would you state in one line that what made them successful, including you?
follow
in
your
the
passion.
respect?
Follow your passion. It's simple. Had I followed my passion, I would have really achieved something worthwhile. But I followed my passion like the Faiz Nazm is there ना, कुछ इश्क किया कुछ काम किया, जब इश्क किया तब काम आड़े आया, जब काम किया तब इश्क आड़े आया, फिर आखिर में परेशान होकर अपने दोनों को थोड़ा छोड़ दिया. But if you really want to achieve something in life, you have to be passionate about that and be willing to make sacrifices and compromises. Not compromises, but sacrifices. You don't compromise your passion or integrity or values.
So, one last question. If you could go back in time and give yourself an advice, what would that be?
I would still do the same, but I would have spent a little more time on mathematics, which is nice, which I thought was difficult. I gave it up. I enjoy doing it, higher mathematics now, symbolic logic and so on. But when you do mathematics in school, you think it's very boring and tough, you give it up. What if I really had a choice, I probably would have done medicine. Because I think medicine again is a very interesting vocation. It is, everybody goes to a medical school.
Right.
Some doctors kill their patients, others save them.
Right.
So it is what you have in your fingers, what you have compassion,
Right.
healing,
Right.
and cutting edge science. So if you are a biophysicist, you should be able to read a PET picture. No artificial technology can go into a database and say this database में ये condition है. But you don't need a doctor who has treated patients clinically to get the feel of what the patient is. I remember a brilliant line in a book by Udwadia. This 95-year-old Persian doctor is an extreme care in charge in Nijamti Munshi Hospital in Bombay. And this is what the gentleman says. The doctor should know when to hold the hand of the patient and console him and say it's time to go. We don't live forever. So I think there's philosophy in medicine. There's chemistry in medicine. There's surgery in medicine. There's prosthetics in medicine. Medicine is a great profession.
Right, sir. So, one last piece of advice that you would want to give to law students.
See, law again is the same thing. Law today is interdisciplinary. You can't do law unless you know science. How do you handle a copyright case which is AI generated text and using a database of copyrighted material? What do you do to that? Music like that. The T-series was mixing.
Yes.
But now anybody can mix and match and do that.
Right.
So you need to know technology. You are fighting a criminal case, you need age. How do you determine age of a person who is a juvenile, who will not be tried, who is a juvenile in conflict with law? But how do you, he has no birth certificate. The bone density doesn't make sense anymore. Is there an accurate way of saying that on this borderline case, this person was 18 and he can be tried as an adult? So I think law again is interdisciplinary, and I am very happy with the course of the National Law Schools.
Right.
But I am very happy to say that when I was teaching here,
Yes.
things must have improved.
Right.
I, as a dean, had a total freedom to devise courses,
Yes.
and they had to go to the board and they were approved. Really, but we had a fantastic interdisciplinary course, and I enjoyed. Otherwise, I would not be able to teach forensic medicine, sports and medicine, media and medicine, electoral law and medicine, science, technology and medicine. And one of the students I taught here has just got admission into PhD in Meccan. So he wrote me a very sweet letter. He said, thank you very much for teaching me at North Camp, and thank you very much for mentoring me. And it's time for big time celebration. I've got a fully funded PhD in Meccan. He remembered the place. He remembered the teacher. I think there's no more satisfaction than that.
So I want to I know you're busy, sir, but this one last question I want to ask you. Sir, when you got Padma Shri, if you had to correlate that particular event in your life with a dish, which dish would that be?
It still would be.
Sir,
It still would be.
Khichdi, right?
Because we tend to overlook that Khichdi brings so many diverse influences. The आपकी जो खिचड़ी बंगाल की है,
हाँ जी.
it has nothing to do with माश की खिचड़ी which is बाग बेला को मिल के स्नान की तरफ. It has nothing to do with the khichdi of the Kejri of the Anglo-Indian tribe. It has nothing to do with the sweet khichdi of the Tamil Nadu called Pongal, which is the sweet khichdi. So it's nothing to do with Laziza, which we discussed at some time, and it has nothing to do with Prime Minister's favorite khichdi. So I would still say that khichdi is such a multi-layered, diverse influences merging into one, and then you uplift your khichdi by saying खिचड़ी के चार या दही मूली किए चार बेगुन भाजा थोड़ा हो जाएगा, थोड़ा
फूलगोभी भाजा
हो जाएगा.
All right. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
sir. It was such a wonderful.
It's
It's
been a pleasure.
always such a absolute amazing session to talk to you.
No, you're being
And
very
thank you so much for
Thank you.
graciously accepting our invite. And with that, we have reached to the end of our episode. Stay tuned to our channel to subscribe and like for more such interesting stories and episodes.